I am picking Ronda Rousey.
I'm picking her as well, but I do agree with you that Liz presents probably her toughest challenge to date. And the one thing that she can present that maybe Ronda has never seen before is the second round. Like, if Liz is wary enough to survive for 5 minutes without getting armbarred, that's going to be a whole new world that Ronda has yet to experience. So that might be the one thing she should look out for, is just Liz's ability to avoid being submitted for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, God, wouldn't it be exciting if it gets out of the first round?
On the rest of this UFC 157 card, we've got the co-main event, which we've talked a little about, but not given a prediction on, Machida and Henderson. And I said this earlier today in a conversation about the fight. The only bad thing for me about this matchup is that somebody I like has to lose. How do you feel about this one?
I'm going to pick Machida, definitely. Machida came in and won the championship and then lost it, right, fairly soundly. But he's one of those athletes that never leaves the gym. He just keeps going back and tries to refine what he's doing. And, he's been kind of under the radar for a while, right? And this is it, if he beats Henderson, it's a title shot. And I think he can do it for sure. I do. At some point, Dan Henderson's age has to catch up with him.
We keep saying that, and he keeps winning, so it's hard.
I know, but I'm going to keep saying it now for his last couple fights, because eventually it will stick.
Yeah.
I like Machida. I think he goes under the radar. I think he's a little more diversified in what he can do. I think he studies his opponents. I think Dan Henderson, isn't this all over the place fighter who does many different techniques. Dan Henderson has his wrestling and he has his punching power, and he throws a lot of the same punches. So I'm hoping that Machida has zoned in on that and found his way to win. I think Machida could be a champion again. And, he, before Vitor Belfort, right, he was the only guy that got John Jones into the second round, right?
Right, so...
Jones dropped a round to him,
Mm-hmm.
So I think for, a few seconds he had John Jones perplexed, and John Jones is definitely the best fighter in the world at that weight. So I think that does say something. For one round, Machida knew what to do, and then John Jones was able to adjust, and awesome on him. That's the mark of a truly great fighter, if you're able to adjust between rounds that way. But Machida had it. He had figured something out, and hopefully he gets past Henderson and gets another shot, and maybe he can elaborate on what he figured out in that 5 minutes before John Jones switched tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think seeing Machida face him a second time would be a lot of fun. So, if for that reason, for no other, I'll pick Machida as well. But it's one of those. I
convinced you, right?
Well, yeah, but it wasn't a hard sell, because I do agree that I keep saying it too, that Dan's going to get old sooner or later. So, and that one thing that we've learned is that when guys get old against Lyoto Machida, they get front kicked in the face and start losing teeth. So.
Ooh, low blow.
Well, I don't mean it that way, because I love Randy to death, and we're going to talk more about him in a minute, but it does happen with guys that face Machida. So let's talk about these other fights real quick before we move on.
Wait, there are other fights?
Yeah. Well, I know those are the only two people are talking about, but at least on the main card, we've got some other interesting prospects, like Urijah Faber and Ivan Menjivar, and talk about two longtime veterans of the sport.
Yeah. How funny is this? Like, I told someone the other night I'm working on this Ivan Menjivar story. First of all, this is me. I look at the roster. I talk to the other SI writers. Two of them say we're going to cover Ronda. So automatically I take myself out of that. I go to the next one. I would have liked to have met with Machida. He's in the LA area, but scheduling hasn't worked out with him yet, between him and I, so I'm going to have to save him for later. Which moves us to Menjivar Faber. And I was like, God, people really don't know who Ivan Menjivar is. I mean, he is kind of a miraculous story. This guy should not be able to keep up with this current bantamweight division. He's been around forever. He's not particularly old. He's 30. But his body has been through, some wear and tear. He's had major knee surgery. He left the sport for 4 years, and now he's back. And if he beats Urijah on Saturday, that's the number 2 ranked guy in most of the ranking systems, including the UFC's their own ranking system. I mean, so if you beat the number 2, what does that make you? So I think it's a very, very big fight for him, and I think he can win it. I do.
Mm-hmm. But it's also one of those situations where if Faber does lose to Menjivar, how many more chances is Faber going to get at this point? Because it seems like every time the guy has had one fight he's won, he's gotten another title shot. And it's getting to that point where you can't keep giving Faber more title shots. And if he loses to Menjivar, that may be the end of the road.
You can't blame Faber. He's just an incredibly popular fighter. So,
I know.
He earns those title shots on his popularity. So, whatever. I gave up a long time ago trying to justify the UFC's rankings. They do what they're going to do, and it's easy to see through some of their decisions. They're business, and they have to try and make money, and they have to keep fighters in front of the fans, the ones that the fans are interested in seeing and will pay money for. And Urijah Faber definitely ranks up there, especially in the featherweight and bantamweight divisions. So I'm more like concentrated on Menjivar, because I think I just find him to be a fascinating story. This guy, if you look at the people he's fought, by 2004, he was a super well-known fighter. And he was fighting in the UCC. He went on and fought in Heroes in 2006. He made it all the way to the semifinals of their 16-man tournament. This guy, and he's good. He's a really, really skilled fighter, and he's fun to watch. And, he just shouldn't be able to keep up with this youthful division we've got going here, but he can. And to me, that's the more intriguing story.
Well, he's definitely one of a kind in that class. There's not many guys who can say they've fought both GSP and Urijah Faber at their respective weights. So he's something else in this sport. But on that note, I also want to move on to one other fight, and then we can talk about the other one on the main card if you want. But you said something that I thought was very telling, is that sometimes you can see the writing on the wall with UFC wanting to keep certain guys in front of the fans. And I have to be honest and say I think that with Josh Koscheck going against Robbie Lawler, they've made a conscious decision here to put a guy that they know that fans have a tendency to love to hate against a guy that in all likelihood he's going to beat, because Robbie's only won 3 of his last 8 fights. So this seems like a way to keep Koscheck in front of the fans.
This is definitely a tough first fight for Robbie Lawler coming back into the UFC. Remember, Robbie Lawler fought in the UFC.
Right.
But has been away for quite a while. Managed to win the Strikeforce Championship, right? Wasn't he the middleweight champion for a spell? Mm-hmm. And now he's back in the UFC. I'm sure when his manager, Monty Cox, got the call for Joe Silva, and Joe Silva said Josh Koscheck, my guess is Monty said something like, "Oh, come on." But, I think it's obviously, it could be a very exciting fight. The UFC obviously agrees because they've made it the lead off of the pay-per-view. Robbie is, he swings with purpose. That dude wants to bring your head off if he can. And I think Koscheck has developed into a great striker from his wrestling roots. Probably one of the best wrestlers, pure wrestlers to come into MMA and adapt to striking so well. I think he's one of the best prospects that ever came through the Ultimate Fighter system too. I think he hit a wall and he had to change his gym, and he left AKA, and there was a lot of drama there, and it takes time to adjust and adapt. So, he could come back on Saturday in great form, and that's a bad situation for Robbie Lawler, because I think Robbie's obviously been out of the loop for a long time. He's left Militich. He was training with Matt Hughes for a while, but I heard they sold that gym. So, I don't really know what his training has been as of late,